Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. If you are returning, welcome. So before I get into this video, please make sure you like, you comment and you subscribe if you enjoy the content on my channel. But for today's video, I'm going to be speaking about the 70-day placement. So what you should expect, what you should be looking for, some of the pros to it, some of the cons to it, and all about some of my experience on my 70-day placement as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, stay tuned for more. Okay, so before I go over my experience on my 70-day placement, I wanted to just go through some formalities. So some of you who maybe are looking to join this course, you know what to expect, you know what to prepare for. So when it comes to your 70-day placement and your 100-day placement, first of all, I want you guys to breathe. You know, if you're about to step into it, breathe. You know, the 70-day placement I classify as your work experience before your actual job. And I say that simply because it's not as intense as statutory or adults, whatever you would go in your 100-day placement, which is a bit more serious. And as for me, when I started the course, you know, I had no social work experience. You know, I worked with young people. I had jobs and voluntary experience in sectors that related to social work, but I was going in completely brand new. I didn't know what to expect. I was very nervous. I was like, how are you putting me in a placement to work with mental health and I have no experience in this field? But I just want you all to just take a breather, you know, breathe, because honestly, it's nothing compared to the 100-day placement. So what I wanted to go through is when you begin the course, you will be given a placement portfolio handbook, and that will kind of lay out your timetable, that will lay out all the documents that you would need as you journey through your 70-day and 100-day placement. So before you begin your 70-day placement, you'll be given a placement portfolio, and that just lays out all of your documentation, that just lays out everything that you would need to journey through your 70-day and your 100-day placement. So it will just be giving you all of your documents. It will let you know what you need to complete and what you need to hand in when you have your submission date. And yeah, so some of those things are, before you start your placement in your 70-day and your 100-day placement, you would have to sit down with your practice educator and whoever your employer may be, and you would have to draw up a placement learning agreement. And this will kind of just lay out, you know, what time do you start work, what time do you finish, what are your lunchtime hours, what are some of the roles and responsibilities that you'll have to do, you know, just basic admin stuff. But you would have to go through that before you actually begin your placement. And then also you will go through, no, that's more so, yeah, forget that. And then once you've started your 70-day placement, you would have a number of things that you'll have to do. So in your 70-day placement, I'm going to go through everything, but I'll just kind of read out the list that you'll be going through. So you would have an index of evidence, you would have your attendance sheet, you would have your midway report, your end of report, you would have to do a first direct observation, and you would have to get a service user or a professional feedback. But I believe the first one for your 70-day placement is a service user feedback. So just to go through some of that, so your attendance sheet is pretty straightforward. You know, what days have you attended work? You would have to mark in where you will have study days, you would have to mark in where you've had sick days, just so you can show that you have completed your 70-day placement. Pretty straightforward. And then going into the index of evidence. So the index of evidence is like a mini timetable where you're just jotting in what you've been doing during your time at placement. So for example, one that everyone would probably have is a service user visit. So you would just type in a code like SUV or something like that, and you would state the days and how many visits you've had, so that when you're going through with your practice educator and your tutor, your university tutor, you can actually see how much work have you done, what targets can you then meet, where maybe are you not getting some experience, are you not getting some learning. And then as you're journeying through your 70-day placement, there will be a point where you'll have a midway point. So this is the point where you stop placement, and I think you have about a week. It seems all foreign to me now, but I think you have about a week at your midway point, you know, your rest, where you have to compile a midway report. You would have to jot down everything that you've been doing, and then you have to sit down with your PE, and then they'll assess, okay, where are you not getting experience, where are you maybe getting more than others, what are some areas you can grow in, and they kind of just look through your development and just making sure that you are on track with your placement. And then when it comes to the end of your placement, you would have an end of report. So that's your index of evidence, all of your learning, your essay, your case study, your mini, I think it's a 2,500 word or 2,000 case study that you have to do as well on your placement, and reflecting your learning. There's also a reflective bit at the end of that as well, and you'll just be laying that out with them. It would also include your practice educators feedback on how you've done on the placement, and just to really help you and prepare you for your 100-day placement. But as I've already said, guys, the 70-day placement is daunting at first, but once you're in it, you're going to be completely fine. It's when you get to the 100-day placement, that's when you need to be on job. And then you would have to get a service user feedback, as I mentioned before. So this is just a service user that you've been working with. You just ask them for some feedback on how you're progressing, how you're learning. Pretty straightforward. And then you would have to do a direct observation as well. So I believe the 70-day placement, you only have to do one. And the direct observation is just your PE and maybe your employer, whoever is at your workplace, just observing you whilst you're with a service user, whilst you're completing a piece of work. And then they give you feedback on it, and then you give feedback based upon the feedback you've gotten. It's just all a learning curve. But one thing I would say about those of you who are going into your 70-day placement, I would advise, as I got the advice and I'm happy I took it, if you're interested in going into children and families long term, I would suggest choosing adults for your 70-day placement. If you're going into adults, vice versa, choose children and family. Not that you want to do it, but just so you can have some extra experience. So long term, I want to work with children and families. That's like my area of interest, the area I want to work with. So I chose adults for my 70-day placement. Okay, so now moving on to where you can be placed in your 70-day placement. So as you guys should be accustomed now, you're not going to get your statutory. For you, those of you who don't know what statutory is, it's basically just the council and a more formalized place of work on your placement. And yeah, you're not going to get something like that on your 70-day placement because, you know, they don't want to kill you. Well, they do kind of want to kill you, but they don't want to kill you like that. But just to give you guys some examples of places that you can be placed at. So I was placed in adult mental health. So I was working in a residential care home, and some of the other students on my course, like my friends, they're working in, one was working in a drug and rehabilitation center. A lot of you will probably be placed around drugs and homelessness because there's a lot of placements there. Another person was working in a care home. Someone was working in a homeless shelter. Another person was working in a hostel. One of my uni friends was working in a domestic centre for victims of domestic abuse. So it really varies, but you will tend to work around more so charities and small organisations for your first placement. But to just get into my placement, so as I mentioned, I worked in adult mental health, and it was a very bittersweet experience. There was times on my 70-day that I felt like, you know, this is kind of like the joke placement. Like, come on, it's so easy. Like, I felt a bit too relaxed. Where am I really going to get nitty gritty and really get into the learning? However, there will be highs and lows on every placement that you have. There'll be times where it may be a bit more quiet. Then there'll be times where it may be a bit more intense. So for example, when, you know, I came in and I had a few documents to write up for a care plan that I was doing for a service user with my supervisor. And then it turned out that we had to do an emergency assessment at a mental health hospital. And that was just crazy because I didn't expect somebody to chase me on the ward. But no, guys, let me get into it. So imagine, you know, you just come into work and you're just, you know, chilled. I was with another uni peer, and, you know, we're just eating biscuits, was ready to go get our mangoes, and then you're being told you have to go and do an assessment. So we're thinking, okay, you know, experience. I'm a bit, you know, scared because I know about the history of this particular hospital. And then you go on the ward and the lovely service users are just free to wander. And one of them decided that he would just follow me and I kind of ran. But, you know, it's all learning. It wasn't really the right thing to do, but I definitely learned from it. But if I just give you guys some of like my day-to-day duties. So I was working between 2 different care homes, and I was responsible for making sure that the service users took their medication every day, making sure that they were able to budget their finances properly. They had shopping, and they had everything that they needed for their day-to-day basis. So it was more so a care home trying to integrate these service users back into the community. So, you know, the house was very discreet. You wouldn't be able to tell that it was a mental health home for vulnerable people. But yeah, so our role was to help them get integrated back into the community. So that meant, you know, going with them weekly to do their shopping, you know, if they needed help with anything around the house, making sure that, you know, they're cleaning their rooms, they're taking care of their personal hygiene, and they're getting themselves back to normality. But some of my role extended to work with service users on different mental health wards and at different hospitals, carrying out assessments, learning how to do that. And I actually really enjoyed that part of it because it really challenged me personally. I really had to overcome some of my fears. I really had to learn how to become confident and assure myself that I know what I'm doing, even though I lacked experience and even though I've never done it before. But I would also say, guys, like, make sure whenever you're in these placements that you're continually refreshing yourself with the policies. You're continually, you know, refreshing yourself with the latest guidelines and articles. I did a lot of reading, especially into work. I'll be reading articles from Baswa about mental health, just to kind of like get myself in the role as much as I could, if that makes any sense. But yeah, it was just a bit daunting, especially because I was the only female in between both care homes. Even all of the staff were all male, so I was the only female. So at points I felt a little bit vulnerable, a little bit nervous. I worked with some paedophiles and people with sexual natures, and who have been convicted for sexual offences. So at times it was a bit daunting for me, but after about a month I was good to go. I learned to stand my ground. I even experienced a service user pushing me in the home. You know, he had a different intent there that I wasn't completely aware of, but just learning how to keep professional boundaries as well. But yeah, guys, the 70-day placement is pretty straightforward. Once you've, you know, got the hang of the paperwork and the documentation, you're going to be completely prepared for your 100-day placement. Okay, so I've just written down some pros and cons to the 70-day placement from my experience. So to start off with a positive, so the pros obviously is experience. This is why I'm saying, if you're looking to go in one field, even if you don't want to work in the other, just get extra experience. It looks good on your CV when you're applying for jobs in the future. They like to see that somebody, you know, has a lot of experience, has attempted to do new things, try new things. So the experience is next to none. Like, I wouldn't take back that placement for anyone because I learned a lot from it. As well, you will have, so the second one I've written down is you have room to ask questions and make mistakes, but you will have that throughout your 70-day, your 100-day, and if you choose to do the ASYE as well, you'll have opportunities to make mistakes, you'll have opportunities to grow and ask questions. But I asked a lot of questions because I spent a lot of time focusing on children and families that I wasn't as well equipped with adults and mental health. So I spent a lot of time asking questions. I got my manager at my 70-day placement to give me documents and stuff to read and stuff to rehearse and go over when I had moments of spare time. And lastly, I wrote that you build confidence. You're going to build confidence. As you go through your entire course, you're going to build confidence. You're going to become more assured of yourself. You're going to learn the language. You're going to learn the practical. You're going to become the best social worker that you can become. As long as you put the work in and you allow yourself to be flexible, you allow yourself to fail sometimes, you allow yourself to get things wrong. But yeah, and when it comes to the cons, the disadvantages that I found, sometimes it was, as I mentioned, it could be a bit routine and a little bit boring. That's why I likened it to a work experience as your 70-day placement, because it just felt like, oh, okay, you know, just another day at the office. But as I said, that can change. The length of time as well. I did the 14-month fast track course, as I mentioned in my previous video. So I just felt that at moments it was just very rushed. Everything was rushed. To do everything was rushed. Sometimes there wasn't enough time to even fit in my PE to have our meetings, because I had to go and do an assessment here, or I had to go and help and do something there. There was even I think there was a day that I even came in on a placement study day just to get I think 2 occasions, that just to get a meeting done, because I was just so overwhelmed with the amount of work and extra responsibility that I had. And I wrote down as well the quality of some services. So there was, as you know, like as students, there's always time for us to talk, there's always time for us to reflect. And when it came to not particularly my service, but a service amongst my peers, it was almost like the quality of the service wasn't great. It wasn't to a high standard. Some placements that my peers were in, my friends were in, it's not really a place that you would like to work. And I think I wouldn't say that's on the university, but at the same time, I think there could have been a bit more groundwork done into where we would be placed, because where you're placed is where you're going to get your experience, right? So if it's not of a good quality, that's going to show on the level of experience and the level of quality that you're going to get on your placement. And the last thing that I wrote down was it doesn't fully prepare you for the intensity of statutory. So as I mentioned, when you guys go into your 100-day placement, that's where the work begins, because jumping from mental health and maybe having like 6 to 7 things that I do daily that I have to go through, to now 50 things in looked after children, where I did my 100-day placement. It was a big jump and it was a big shock at first, but I felt that my first placement didn't fully prepare me for statutory. But if I'm honest with you guys, I don't really think that something really can prepare you for that. You just need to get in with all your fingers, with all your teeth, with everything that you've got, and you just need to get it done. Yeah guys, we have come to the end of another video. I hope that you guys have enjoyed it. Yeah, engage in the comment section. Let me know what you guys are thinking. If you have any questions about your 70-day placement, you can also contact me or get me via DM on my Instagram. And yeah, I'll see you guys in my next one. See you. Bye.